The casserole hit the table with a soft thud, steam curling like a question mark. And Eleanor's voice cut through it, sharp as a bread knife. "Lord, Sarah, you call this edible? Smells like the church basement on bingo night." The kids froze mid-bite. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. But I smiled the way you do when you're holding a newborn and the doctor's still stitching. Let me take you back to that Sunday it all cracked open, though the cracks had been spidering for months. Our dining room faces west, so late afternoon light slants across the oak table in long honey bars. The chandelier secondant from an estate sale indicator swings gently when the AC kicks on, crystals chiming like wind bells. I'd set the table with the good plates, the ones with the tiny blue forget-me-nots my grandmother painted by hand. The casserole was my mother's recipe: ground beef, elbow macaroni, cream of mushroom, topped with cheddar that bubbled gold. The smell filled the house, the way Sunday smells should, warm, familiar. A little sinful dot, Eleanor arrived at 4 o'clock sharp, heels clicking on the porch like a metronome. She's 60 this year, but you'd never know it from the way she carries herself, spine straight, silver hair twisted into a French roll so tight it could slice bread. She wore the same navy suit she'd worn to my wedding, pearls gleaming at her throat like tiny accusations. My husband Daniil, our only child, stood to greet her, kissing her cheek the way he's done since he was 6. Our daughters, Lily and Grace, ages 10 and 12, scrambled for hugs. I stayed in the kitchen doorway, apron still tied, wooden spoon in hand. "Smells interesting," Eleanor said, nose wrinkling as she peeled off her gloves finger by finger. "Hope it tastes better than last week's disaster." Last week had been lemon herb chicken. She'd called it hospital food with delusions of grandeur. We sat. Daniel carved the roast I'd made to go with the casserole medium rare, the way he likes it. I passed the green beans almondine, the yeast rolls still warm from the oven. The girls chattered about school, Lily's science fair volcano, Grace's upcoming piano recital. Eleanor listened with half an ear, eyes scanning the table like she was grading it. She took one bite of casserole, chewed slow, then set her fork down with a delicate clink. "Sarah, honey," she said, voice syrupy, "you know I only say this because I care. But this is bland. No seasoning. My Daniel grew up on food with flavor." She turned to him, patting his hand. "Remember my Sunday pot roast, son?" Now that was a meal. Daniel chuckled, awkward. "Mom, it's fine." "Fine is for strangers," she said. "Family deserves excellence." I felt Lily's foot nudge mine under the table. Her silent, "Are you okay?" I nodded, spooned more casserole onto Grace's plate. The cheddar had congealed into a rubbery skin. My appetite curdled with it. This was our rhythm every Sunday for 2 years. Ever since Daniel's father passed, and Eleanor decided family dinner meant her weekly inspection. She'd arrive with a Tupperware of her own leftover Solway's better, always seasoned, just right, and leave with a list of my shortcomings tucked into her purse like grocery coupons. The girls started eating faster, heads down. Daniel started pouring her wine before she asked. I'd married Daniel at 24, pregnant with Lily, in the little Baptist church on Covington Highway. Eleanor had planned the wedding down to the Jordan almonds, then spent the reception telling guests I'd snagged him quick. I was a kindergarten teacher then. He was finishing his MBA. We bought the house in Ellenwood with a VA loan, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, a maple tree in the front yard that drops helicopter seeds every spring. I planted hydrangeas along the fence, painted the kitchen sunflower yellow, hung the girls' artwork in cheap frames from Target. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Sunday dinners started as a kindness. After Mr. Rivers died, Eleanor rattled around her big house in Conyers, alone. Daniel worried. I offered. The first month was lovely. Eleanor brought her famous peach cobbler. Told stories about Daniel's childhood, the time he tried to dye the dog blue. I soaked it up, hungry for roots. My own mama lived in Ohio, too far for weekly visits. Eleanor became the grandmother my girls deserved. Then the compliments turned to corrections. The cobbler stopped coming. The critiques began. Sarah, darling, you're burning the garlic. That gravy's lumpy. Did you even whisk it? Store-bought rolls. In my day. I laughed it off at first. Swallowed it with the wine. Told myself she was grieving. That sharpness was her love language. But the girls started mimicking her. Grace once wrinkled her nose at my spaghetti and said, Grandma would add more salt. Lily stopped asking me to pack her lunch. Daniel noticed, but stayed quiet. She's old school, he'd say, kissing my forehead. Means well. I nodded, stirred the pot, added another dash of whatever she claimed was missing. The casserole incident was the 5th Sunday in a row. I'd followed her Petrost recipe to the letter: seared chuck, carrots, potatoes, thyme from my windowsill. She took one bite, grimaced. Too much pepper. You trying to kill us. The girls giggled, nervous. I felt the spoon tremble in my hand. That night, after Eleanor left kissing the girls, ignoring May stood at the sink, scrubbing the Pyrex, until my fingers pruned. Daniel dried. She doesn't mean it, he said. She said it in front of the kids. They know you're a good cook, do they? I set the dish down harder than I meant. Because last week, Grace asked if we could have Grandma's meatloaf instead of mine. He was quiet. The dishwasher hummed. Outside, the maple rustled in the wind. I opened my phone, scrolled to the voice memos. I'd started recording her comments 3 months ago, a secret habit born of frustration. The first entry, Sarah, that chicken's dry as the Sahara. The latest, today's casserole takedown. I played it back, volume low. Eleanor's voice filled the kitchen, crisp and cutting. Daniel's face tightened. You're recording my mother. I'm documenting, I said. There's a difference. He took the phone, deleted the file. Let's not escalate. I didn't argue. But I didn't delete the backups either. The next Sunday, I made lasagna. Eleanor arrived with a jar of her homemade sauce, just in case. She tasted mine, smiled tight. Close. Needs more oregano. The girls nodded, like trained parrots. I smiled, served the garlic bread, and added another memo. The invitations went out 6 weeks before Eleanor's 60th. Thick cream cardstock with gold foil that cost more than my wedding shoes. She'd planned her own party down to the string quartet and the 3-tier coconut cake from that fancy bakery in Buckhead. A milestone, she called it, pressing the envelopes into my hands like a relay baton. You'll host, Sarah. Family tradition. Daniel nodded along. Already tasting the cake, I stood in the kitchen, holding the stack. The maple's helicopter seeds drifting past the window like tiny surrender flags. The girls were at a sleepover. Daniel was at the hardware store for a new grill, great. The house smelled faintly of the lemon polish I use on Sundays. I set the invitations on the counter, ran my thumb over the raised lettering. Eleanor Marie Rivers requests the honor. My name, nowhere. Just hosted by the Rivers family. I opened the fridge to start meal in advance, pulled out the leftover lasagna from last Sunday, still in its glass dish, foil tinted like a little silver roof. The cheese had hardened into amber ridges. I should have tossed it then. Instead, I slid it to the back behind the orange juice. A quiet rebellion. The slow burn started small, the way a stove eye glows red before you notice the heat. Eleanor's comments sharpened. She began correcting me in front of neighbors. At the July 4th block party, she took my potato salad from Mrs. Henderson's hands, added a pinch of her own seasoning right there on the picnic table. "Sarah tries," she said, loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac. But my recipe's tried and true. Mrs. Henderson smiled polite, took a bite, nodded at Eleanor. I stood holding the empty bowl, plastic fork bent in my fist. Daniel laughed it off later. "Mom's proud of her cooking. Let her have it." I started timing her arrivals. 4 o'clock on the dot, heels clicking, purse swinging like a pendulum. I'd greet her at the door with iced teas, wheat to lemons, the way she likes. She'd sip, grimace. "Needs more sugar, honey." Then sweep past me to inspect the table settings. The girls adapted. Lily set the table without being asked. Grace poured Eleanor's water before mine. They still hugged me goodnight, but their eyes flicked to Grandma when I tucked them in, waiting for the verdict on bedtime stories. "Too scary," Eleanor would say, if I read Where the Wild Things Are. Daniel never liked monsters. I kept recording. The memos piled up like unread mail. That cornbread's dense as a brick. Store-bought pie crust. Shameful. My son deserves a wife who can boil water without a recipe. I played them back alone, volume low, while folding laundry in the basement. The dryer thumped steady, a heartbeat under her voice. I didn't cry. I cataloged. Daniel found one file by accident, left my phone on the nightstand, screen unlocked. He listened for 30 seconds, face cycling through confusion, guilt, anger. "Sarah, this is obsessive." "It's evidence," I said, calm. "She says these things. She's 60. Set in her ways. She's teaching our daughters I'm incompetent." He deleted the file again. "Talk to her." "Not this." I tried. The next Sunday, I waited until the girls were in the den with their tablets. Eleanor sipped her tea, eyes on the crossword. "Eleanor," I started, voice soft, "when you critique my cooking in front of Lily and Grace, it hurts them. They're proud of me." She didn't look up. "Children need honesty. Builds character. It builds shame." She folded the paper. "Precise creas. Sarah, I raised a good man. I know what a home needs. You're young. You'll learn." I felt the words land between my ribs like a dull knife. "I've been cooking for this family 12 years, and I cooked for 40. She patted my hand, rings cold. "Keep trying, dear." That night, I moved the lasagna to the bottom drawer, pushed behind the frozen peas. 3 weeks old now. The foil had started to pit with rust-colored spots. I should have dumped it. Instead, I labeled it in Sharpie, "E's birthday due, not throw." The party planning became a second job. Eleanor emailed spreadsheets, guest list, seating chart, dietary restrictions. She wanted prime rib, garlic mashed, asparagus with hollandaise. "None of your shortcuts," she wrote. I printed the emails, highlighted the insults in yellow. "Sarah, confirm the florist uses real gardenias, not those cheap supermarket ones. Tell the caterer medium rare, not the bloody mess you served last Easter." Daniel helped hang the fairy lights in the backyard, stringing them through the maple while I arranged rental chairs. "Mom's excited," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. "Let's make it perfect." I nodded, throat tight. Perfect. Always perfect. 2 weeks before the party, Eleanor arrived unannounced on a Wednesday. I was elbow-deep in meatloaf for the girls' dinneronions, sizzling, ketchup glaze bubbling. She breezed in, took one sniff. Greasy. Daniel's cholesterol. Sarah, wiped my hands on the apron, counted to 5. It's turkey, lean, still. She opened my spice cabinet, rearranged jars. Where's the smoked paprika? Never mind, I'll bring mine. She left with a Tupperware of her own meatloaf for the girls. Poor things, and a list of party tasks taped to my fridge. I stared at the lasagna, in the freezer, now 4 weeks old. The edges had crystallized with ice burn. I closed the door, the night before the party. I baked the coconut cake from scratch, 3 layers, cream cheese frosting, toasted flakes on top. The kitchen smelled like a tropical vacation. Daniel tasted the batter, grinned. Mom's gonna love this. I smiled, slid the leftover lasagna into the microwave to thaw. The glass dish spun slow, sauce separating into oily pools. I reheated it low, just enough to loosen. Then I scraped it into a clean Pyrex, smoothed the top, sprinkled fresh parsley like nothing had changed. Labeled it again, Ease Special. Saturday dawned clear, the kind of October blue that makes you believe in fresh starts. Guests arrived at 5 caissons from Macon, church ladies, Daniel's old Little League coach. The backyard glowed with fairy lights, tables draped in white linen. The caterer set up the prime rib station. The quartet tuned in the corner. Eleanor floated in a champagne silk dress, pearls triplet, accepting compliments like a queen. I wore the green dress she'd once called frumpy but serviceable, smiled, served, refilled. The girls handed out programs, a celebration of 60. Your steer hair in matching braids. Dinner was flawless. Guests raved. Eleanor beamed. Then came the cake. I wheeled it out on the antique tea cart, candles flickering. The crowd sang. She blew them out in one breath, cheeks pink with joy. Speech. Someone shouted. Eleanor took the microphone the DJ handed her, voice clear as church bells. Thank you all for coming. 60 years, can you believe it? I'm blessed with a wonderful son, 2 perfect granddaughters, and she paused, smiled at me. A daughter-in-law who tries her best. Laughter rippled. I felt Daniel's hand on my back, supportive. I smiled wider. As dessert plates circulated, I slipped into the kitchen. The special casserole waited on the warming tray, covered in foil. I carried it out, set it front and center on Eleanor's table. Your favorite, I said, loud enough for the nearest tables. I saved it just for you. She lifted the lid, inhaled. My meatloaf, Sarah, you shouldn't have. The first bite was triumphant. The second, slower. By the third, her smile faltered. Eleanor's fork hovered midair, a chunk of meatloaf trembling on the tines. The backyard lights caught the sheen of sweat, suddenly beading along her hairline. She swallowed once, hard, then forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Delicious, she managed, voice thin. Just like mine. The quartet had shifted to a gentle waltz. Couples swayed on the portable dance floor. I stood beside her table, hands clasped in front of my apron, still wearing it, a deliberate choice. Daniel was across the yard refilling Uncle Ray's bourbon. The girls twirled in their party dresses, oblivious. Eleanor took another bite. Her throat worked. A small sound escaped, half cough, half gag. She pressed a linen napkin to her lips, pearls clacking against her teeth. Water, she croaked. I was already pouring from the crystal pitcher, ice cubes chiming. She drank greedily, water dribbling down her chin onto the champagne silk. The color drained from her cheeks in a slow tide. "Mom." Daniel appeared, hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" "Fine," she snapped, then winced, clutching her stomach. "Just, Rich." The first cramp hit like a fist. Eleanor doubled forward, chair scraping backward. The microphone squealed as it hit the table. Guests turned, the music faltered. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket, thumb already on the voice memo app. Volume low, but not low enough. That cornbread's dense as a brick. Store-bought pie crust. Shameful. My son deserves a wife who can boil water without a recipe. The recordings played in order, each clip dated Eleanor's voice crisp and cutting. Conversations hushed. Mrs. Henderson's mouth formed a perfect "Oh Cousin Marlene" set down her cake fork. Eleanor's eyes locked on mine, wide with recognition. Another cramp twisted her features. She stood, wobbled, one hand braced on the table. "Turn that off." I didn't. The final clip: last Sunday's casserole take downchode across the yard. Smells like the church basement on bingo night. Daniel reached for the phone. I stepped back, calm. "It's evidence, remember." Eleanor lurched toward the house, one hand over her mouth. The quartet stopped entirely. Guests parted like the Red Sea as she stumbled through the French doors, silk dress catching on a chair leg. The bathroom door slammed, silence, then murmurs. The girls ran to me, eyes huge. "Mom, is Grandma sick?" "Something didn't agree with her," I said, pocketing the phone. Daniel followed his mother inside. I stayed in the yard, refilling water glasses, accepting concerned pats on the back. "Too much rich food," I murmured. "Happens at 60. 20 minutes later Daniel emerged, face ashen. "We're taking her to the ER. Food poisoning, maybe. She's violent." I nodded, already gathering her purse, her shawl. The caterer packed leftovers into foil swans. Guests trickled out with awkward hugs and promises to pray. The fairy lights flickered. Suddenly, garish dot at the hospital. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Eleanor lay in a curtained bay, fur dripping, hospital gown gaping at the back. The doctor, kind-eyed resident, confirmed salmonella, likely from improperly stored leftovers. Eleanor groaned, turned her face to the wall. Daniel paced. "Mom says you served her old food on purpose." I sat on the plastic chair, hands folded. "I served her what she taught me to value: her own recipes, saved special." He stopped pacing. "Sarah. She's been saving her critiques for years. I just returned the favor." The curtain swished. The girls peeked in, clutching Eleanor's discarded pearls. Lily whispered, "Grandma's crying." Eleanor's voice cracked from the bed. "Get out. All of you." We left her with the 4 and the beeping monitors. In the parking lot, Daniel leaned against the minivan, keys dangling. "You could have killed her." "Salmonella's rarely fatal in healthy adults," I said, "nursecum." "She'll be home tomorrow," humbled. He stared at the asphalt. "This crosses a line. So did teaching our daughters I'm a failure in my own kitchen." The drive home was quiet. The girls fell asleep in the back, heads touching. The maple tree loomed dark against the streetlight. Inside, the house smelled of coconut cake and extinguished candles. I tucked the girls in, kissed their foreheads. They smelled like birthday frosting and fear. Daniel stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty warming tray. "What now?" "Now, we clean up," I said, tying a fresh trash bag. "And we talk. Really talk." We didn't sleep. Sat at the table where the casserole had mocked me weeks ago, coffee cooling between us. I played the recordings again, volume low. He listened without interrupting. When the last clip ended, he rubbed his eyes. I didn't hear it, he said. Not like this. You didn't want to. He nodded, slow. I'm sorry. The words were small, but they landed solid. I reached for his hand. We fix this together. Or we don't fix it at all. Sunday dawned gray. Eleanor was discharged with antibiotics and a stern lecture on food safety. She didn't call, didn't text. The girls asked if Grandma was mad. I said, Grandma's learning. Monday, Daniel took the day off. We drove to Conyers, unannounced. Eleanor opened the door in her robe, hair loose and gray, face bare. She looked smaller. I'm here to apologize, Daniel said before she could speak. And to listen. We sat in her sunroom, surrounded by African violets and framed photos of a younger her smiling, arms around a toddler, Daniel. I placed a Tupperware on the coffee table, fresh meatloaf, still warm, made with her exact recipe. I saved the good stuff, I said. No shortcuts. She stared at the container, then at me. Tears welled, surprising us all. I was cruel, she whispered. After Harold died, I didn't know how to be needed anymore. Criticizing you was easier than admitting I was lonely. Daniel took her hand. We need you, Mom. But not like that. She nodded, wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe. I'll do better. The healing started slow, the way a garden recovers from drought. Eleanor came for dinner the next Sunday. No heels, no purse, just a homemade apple pie and an apology for the girls. She ate my lasagna without comment. Asked for seconds. The recordings stayed on my phone. A reminder, not a weapon. Some nights I played them back alone, volume off, watching her mouth move in silence. Then I deleted one. Then another. Until only the first remaineth cornbread insult like a scar that proves you survived. The first Sunday after the hospital, Eleanor arrived at 3:30 instead of 4. Driving herself in the old Buick she hadn't touched since Harold's funeral. She wore a soft cardigan the color of chamomile tea, and carried the pie in both hands like an offering. No heels, no pearls. Just sensible flats and the faint scent of the lavender lotion she'd used since the 70s. The girls met her at the door, cautious. Lily took the pie. Grace hugged her waist. Eleanor's eyes filled, but she blinked it back. I brought vanilla ice cream too, she said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. In the cooler, in the trunk. I stood in the hallway, apron tied, hands damp from peeling potatoes. Daniel was at the grill outside, smoke curling up past the maple. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary, my roast chicken, not hers. I'd followed no one's recipe but my own. Eleanor hesitated on the threshold. May I come in? I stepped aside. Tables set. We moved through dinner like dancers learning new steps. Eleanor sat in her usual chair, but didn't inspect the silverware. She passed the green beans without comment. When Grace spilled a drop of gravy on the tablecloth, Eleanor dabbed it with her napkin instead of sighing. The girls watched her like she might sprout wings. Daniel carved the chicken, golden skin crackling. I served the potatoes smashed, not mashed, with chives from the windowsill. Eleanor took a bite, chewed slow, then looked at me. This is good, Sarah. The words were simple, but they landed like rain on parched soil. I nodded. Thank you. Conversation stayed light. School projects, Daniel's new client, the church fall festival. No critiques. No comparisons. When the pie came out, Eleanor cut the first slice herself, handed it to Lily with a trembling smile. Your favorite, baby. After dessert, the girls cleared the table without being asked. Daniel started the dishes. Eleanor lingered in the dining room, twisting her napkin. I owe you more than pie, she said quietly. I poured us both coffee, hers with 2 sugars, mine black. We sat at the table, the chandelier swaying gentle above us. I was jealous, she admitted, staring into her cup. You have what I lost. A full house. Children who need you. A husband who looks at you like you hung the moon. She swallowed. I picked at you to feel relevant. I traced the rim of my mug. You hurt me in front of my daughters. I know, her voice cracked. I heard myself on those recordings. Like listening to a stranger. She met my eyes. I'm ashamed. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable. Outside, the maple dropped a helicopter seed that spun lazy to the porch. I deleted most of them, I said. Kept one. A reminder for me, not a weapon. She nodded. Fair. We didn't hug. Not yet. But when she left, she hugged the girls tight, kissed Daniel's cheek, and paused at the door. Next Sunday, I'll bring the rolls. If you'll have me, I smiled. Bring the recipe. We'll make them together. The weeks unfolded like a quilt being stitched, one square at a time. Eleanor came early, helped peel carrots, showed Grace how to braid challah. She's still correct decently, now. A little more salt, honey, brings out the flavor. But she asked first, may I? The girls blossomed. Lily asked me to pack her lunch again, turkey and Swiss, cut diagonally, crusts off. Grace practiced piano without Eleanor hovering. Then played her recital piece for her grandmother, over face. Beaming when Eleanor clapped. Daniel and I talked for the first time in years. Late nights on the porch swing, crickets chirping, wine glasses sweating in the heat. He admitted he'd been scared to confront his mother, scared to lose the last piece of his dad in her. I admitted I'd let resentment fester because it was easier than asking for help. We're a team, he said, lacing his fingers through mine. I should have had your back. You do now. Thanksgiving came early that year. Eleanor arrived with her rolling pin and a bag of flour, no Tupperware of better food. We made the entire meal together, turkey brined in her recipe, stuffing in mine, cranberry sauce from scratch. The girls set the table with the good china. No forget-me-nots, this time just plain white, a fresh start. Eleanor raised her glass at dinner, voice steady. To Sarah, who taught this old woman that love tastes better than pride. The girls cheered. Daniel squeezed my knee under the table. I felt the weight lift, slow and sure, like a blanket sliding off shoulders. Christmas brought snow, rare in Georgia, magical. Eleanor came for breakfast, stayed through lunch, helped the girls build a lopsided snowman in the front yard. She wore Daniel's old scarf, cheeks red, laughing when Grace pelted her with a snowball. I watched from the porch, coffee steaming, heart full. Some habits die hard. Eleanor still rearranges my spice cabinet when she thinks I'm not looking. I still label leftovers with Sharpie. But the labels now say, Ease, Rolls Freeze, or Girls. Favorite chili, the 3-week-old casserole became a family joke, told with eye rolls and giggles. Never malice. One Sunday in February, Eleanor arrived with a gift, a wooden recipe box. Sanded smooth, her handwriting on the cards inside. Mama's pot roast, Eleanor's peach cobbler, Sarah's smashed potatoes. She'd written them all, side by side, for the girls, she said, pressing it into my hands. So they know where they come from. And where they're going. I traced the cards, tears blurring the ink. Thank you. She hugged me, then awkward at first, then fierce. She smelled like flour and lavender and second chances. The last recording, the cornbread instaltai, deleted on a quiet Tuesday while the girls were at school. The phone asked, "Are you sure?" I was. Spring arrived with dogwoods blooming pink along the fence. Eleanor and I planted tomatoes together, her knees creaking, my back aching. The girls watered them after school, arguing over who got to use the good hose. Daniel built a trellis from scrap wood, same as he'd done for the fairy lights. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the kitchen filled with the smell of marinara, Eleanor tasted the sauce, smiled.
Perfect.
I stirred, heart light. Needs more basil. She shook her head. Needs nothing. Just like you. The tomatoes grew fat and red by June, hanging heavy on the vines like secrets finally ripe for telling. Eleanor and I harvested the first batch on a Saturday morning, the air thick with heat and the buzz of cicadas. The girls ran barefoot through the grass, buckets swinging, dirt smudging their knees. Daniel snapped photos on his phone. Eleanor, in a wide straw hat. Me, in my old kindergartner apron, the one with the faded alphabet border. We filled 3 baskets, enough for sauce, salsa, and a few to eat warm off the vine with salt. Inside, the kitchen became a factory. Pots simmered, jars clinked. The radio played Lowell Motown, Eleanor's choice. She showed Lily how to score the bottoms for easy peeling. Grace stirred the sauce under my watchful eye. The smell wrapped the house like a hug. Garlic, basil, summer itself. Eleanor wiped her hands on a dish towel, looked around. This kitchen's seen some things. I laughed, ladling sauce into jars. Mostly your critiques. She smiled, sheepish. Mostly my fear. We sealed the jars, lined them on the counter, like soldiers. The girls labeled them in marker. Grandma and Mom's famous sauce, 2025. Eleanor traced the letters. Eyes soft. That night we ate on the porch. Paper plates balanced on our knees, fireflies blinking across the yard. The sauce tasted like victory, bright, rich hours. Daniel raised his sweet tea. To the women who feed us, body and soul. The girls clinked plastic cups. Eleanor reached for my hand under the table. Squeezed once. No words needed. Summer blurred into routines that felt new because they were chosen, not endured. Eleanor came Tuesdays now, not just Sunday. Helped with homework. Taught Grace piano scales. Let Lily braid her hair into messy fits. She still corrected, but gently. Try the C-sharp, baby, makes it sing. The girls soaked it up, no longer flinching. Daniel and I found our rhythm again. Friday nights became date night. Ship diner burgers, dollar movies, the girls with a sitter. We talked about everything, his stress at work, my dream of going back to school for a master's in early childhood. He listened. Really listened. One night, he brought home a brochure from the community college, circled the program in red pen. If you want it, he said, we'll make it work. I enrolled in the fall, 2 nights a week. Eleanor babysat, packed the girls' lunches with notes in her neat cursive. Knock 'em dead. Mama, the recipe box lived on the counter now, lid open, cards added weekly. Sarah's summer salsa. Eleanor's cornbread, finally perfected. The girls illustrated the front stick figure, grandmas and moms. Hearts for eyes. One October evening, the air crisp with coming frost. Eleanor arrived with a surprise. A second recipe box, smaller, painted blue. Inside, blank cards and a fountain pen. For your students, she said. When you teach again, pass it on. I turned the box in my hands, throat tight. You believe in me. I always did, she said. Just forgot how to say it. Thanksgiving that year was at her house in Conyers, her idea, a peace offering. The dining room smelled of sage and nutmeg, the table set with her mother's china. She'd cooked the turkey. I brought the sides. The girls set out name cards, theirs in glitter gel pen. Daniel carved, same as always, but this time, Eleanor asked me to say grace. I bowed my head. For second chances, for full hearts, for family that chooses each other. Amen. Eleanor's eyes shone when she passed the gravy. Amen. Christmas came with snow again, deeper this time. We decorated to treason at our house, one at hers. Eleanor taught the girls to string popcorn, needles pricking fingers, laughter echoing. She hung the ornament I'd made in kindergarten, a clothespin reindeer, paint-chipped but proud front and center. On New Year's Eve, we gathered in her sunroom, the violets blooming purple against the frost. Midnight struck. Fireworks popped distant over the neighborhood. Eleanor raised her sparkling cider. To 2026, she said. May we keep choosing kindness. The girls cheered. Daniel kissed me, slow and sure. Eleanor hugged us all. Her cardigan soft against my cheek. Spring brought my first semester grade, straight A's. A note from the professor, natural teacher. Welcome back. I framed it beside the recipe box. Eleanor beamed when I showed her, then pulled a new card from her purse. Sarah's graduation punch for when she walks the stage. The tomatoes came early that year. Vines heavy by May. We harvested again, baskets fuller, laughter louder. The girls had grown Lily's braids, now reached her waist. Grace's piano pieces filled the house with Mozart. Daniel built a second trellis, painted it the same blue as the recipe box. One Sunday in June, the kitchen windows opened to the breeze. Eleanor tasted the sauce, smiled. Needs nothing. I stirred. Heart light. Needs love. She nodded. Got plenty of that. The last piece fell into place quiet, the way sunrise creeps through curtains. Eleanor still came every Sunday, but now she knocked soft, waited for the girls to open the door. She still rearranged the spices, but asked first. I still labeled leftovers, but shared the Sharpie. The cornbread insult stayed deleted, a ghost laid to rest. Some nights I dreamed of the old casserole, the foil pitted and cold. I woke, smiling, the smell of fresh basil drifting from the windowsill. We weren't perfect. Eleanor forgot herself, Smedamscott herself, mid-critique, clapped a hand over her mouth, apologized with pie. I forgot sometimes, too, snapped, when tired, apologized with coffee. But the apologies came quick, the hugs quicker. One evening, as the sun dipped gold behind the maple, Eleanor and I sat on the porch swing, the girls inside practicing a duet. She rocked, gentle, chains creaking. I almost lost this, she said. We both did. She reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out a small photo her and Harold at their wedding, young and laughing. She pressed it into my hand. For the recipe box, she said. So the girls know love looks like choosing, every day. I tucked it between the cards, beside Sarah's smashed potatoes. The swing rocked. The tomatoes ripened. The house held us all, full and warm and finally, truly, home.